Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is part 3 of my response to Michael Jones on the marriage of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Aisha radiallahu anha. Let's get going.
As we can see right here, the age of puberty came a lot younger than now. And here's about, how puberty came about for younger girls. Here's the sources right at the bottom.
You didn't read your own sources. I checked.
Yes, I'm sure we're all very impressed.
Let's start with the second one. This quote is not actually from the paper. It's just a copy and paste quote you find on various Islamic websites. So, improper citation. We're already off to a bad start. But if we actually go to this paper, it actually says the opposite of the point you're trying to make. It says girls in the Paleolithic times matured quicker. This was delayed in the Neolithic period. And then, with settlement, childhood disease and postnatal undernutrition became common, and therefore the average age of menarche was delayed. Only now is it falling back to the Paleolithic time frame because of better nutrition. This is also what your other source is saying. So actually, in Muhammad's time, which was post-Neolithic and pre-modern times, it's likely that girls actually matured slower, not quicker.
It's one thing to actually criticize someone for, quote, improper citation, and then show the proper citation, and quite another to make an improper citation on your own. It is incorrect of you to cite the Gluckman and Hansen paper and apply it to Aisha radiallahu anha in 7th century Arabia. Why? Well, not once in the entire paper is Arabia even mentioned. Rather, the findings of the paper are at best general to human civilization, and it would be fallacious to apply it to every society in every time period since the end of the Neolithic period. Also, the authors clearly stated that menarche, or menstruation, was delayed due to increasing population density and poor hygiene, particularly in Europe. And on the previous page, the authors noted that the age of menarche has shown a decreasing trend over the past 100 years in populations of Northern European origin, and vaguely mentioned, quote, other populations without any further clarification. So, the authors tended to focus on European trends and did not specifically discuss other regions of the world, such as Arabia. So, improper citation on you. Shame, shame. What the study demonstrates is that sexual maturity in humans has varied throughout history. And that is exactly what we have been trying to tell you modernist Christians, who would have to throw the Bible under the bus in order to maintain their credibility in criticizing the marriage of Muhammad and Aisha.
My only question to you is that how come this criticism of Muhammad only came about recently?
Because Islamic apologists started encountering us in the West, and we were mortified by this obvious immoral behavior.
I'm sorry. I have to laugh at this ignorance. Do you really think Muslim apologists only began encountering you jokers in the West only recently? Let's hear that again in case I'm going deaf.
My only question to you is that how come this criticism of Muhammad only came about recently?
Because Islamic apologists started encountering us in the West, and we were mortified by this obvious immoral behavior.
Wow, you're actually serious. Did Christians not know about Islam for the first 1200 years of its history? Wasn't there a little war in medieval times between Muslims and Christians that lasted 200 years? Oh yeah, the Crusades! So, it was certainly not due to a lack of encounters with the West that we find no Christian polemics against the marriage until recently. In fact, guys like John of Damascus and Thomas Aquinas wrote critiques of Islam, which were mired with their own stupidity and ignorance, but they never once criticized the marriage with Aisha radiallahu anha. Rather, as Dr. Jonathan Brown says in his book Misquoting Muhammad, I have found no instance of anyone criticizing the Prophet's marriage due to Aisha's age or accusing him of pedophilia until the early 20th century. Even in the 19th century, British, German, and French Orientalists mostly passed over the matter in silence. The first condemnatory note comes in Muhammad and the Rise of Islam, 1905, by the British Orientalist David Margoliouth. Interestingly, Brown notes that while the marriage was sometimes a target of Christian polemics against Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, as in the case of a 17th century Italian priest, it was not due to Aisha's age, but the Prophet's alleged, quote, uncontrollable desire for her, a claim which was obviously false in itself.
Robert Woodbury notes it was Christian missionaries who actively worked to end child bride practices around the world.
How ironic that you were berating the brother for, quote, improper citation and then do it yourself. Again.
Improper citation. We're already off to a bad start.
Well, I got news for you. I checked your source, and here is what it actually says. Well, well, well. It turns out that claiming the missionaries opposed child marriage is a bit of a misleading claim. What they actually opposed was consummating marriages before age 12. So let me ask you, Jones, are you suggesting that 12-year-old girls can consent to marriage and sexual intercourse? Are you saying that 12-year-olds are adults? I ask because the World Health Organization currently defines child marriage as marriage before the age of 18. Thus, according to 21st century standards, your heroic Christian missionaries were not actively working to end child bride practices around the world. Rather, they were actively encouraging it, as they had throughout most of Christian history. In fact, as Paul Bennett notes, even with the rise of Christianity in the West, most European countries had no minimum age of marriage and based suitability solely on physical maturity. Furthermore, he states that even this was often neglected. In fact, the most influential legal text of the 17th century in England, written by Sir Edward Coke, noted that the marriage of girls less than 12 years of age was frequent and normal. Oh, and remember this guy? Thomas Aquinas even said that while consent to marriage could generally be done by girls at age 12, this was not a strict age limit, since if anyone reached the required perfection before the aforesaid age, so that nature and reason are sufficiently developed to supply the lack of age, the marriage is not annulled. Therefore, if people marry and have marital intercourse before the aforesaid age, which was 12 for girls, their marriage is nonetheless perpetually indissoluble. So, contrary to Jones's claims, Christians were not leading the way in opposing child marriage.
وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلُ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا